In a season that has the tragedy of Rigoletto and the tragedy of Tosca and the tragedy of the Flying Dutchman, because in all of these, things don't end terribly happily, we wanted to lighten it up a little. And Don Pasquale is one of those great works that we haven't done here very frequently, and it was sort of crying out to be done again. In thinking about Pasquale, we had a couple of ways to do it. One was to do the traditional production, just set it the way it's always been done. And the other was to go in the direction we have gone. And that happened because I knew of David Gately's earlier production of this opera in this Wild West style. And I know it was a great success. I'd read all about it and I'd thought, what a terrific way to look at the work.
Accidenti!
You know, a lot of people will look at this work and say, gee, they've updated it. And we haven't really, because interestingly, the date is the same as the original. What we've done is relocate it. And it's interesting the way people get excited about updating and changing, and we really shouldn't. I think the thing about this opera is just enjoy it, have fun with it. It's a lightweight comedy. And what David Gately has done with it is absolutely superb, and it works beautifully.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny because often as these things start, it kind of started out as a joke between a producer and myself. But then I went away and thought about it for a while and thought about all of the things that it did for the piece. If there are any issues in this, it's a rather lighthearted comedy, so we're not talking great weighty issues here. But if there are any issues here, it's sort of a generational conflict between the old generation who wants to arrange a marriage and the younger generation who wants to marry for love. In setting it in the United States, in a foreign country for him, it also became sort of a cultural clash because he was definitely from the old world and it was old school, and Ernesto, having grown up in the United States, was instilled with that sense of independence, and he was going to marry the woman he wanted. And so it seemed to add a whole kind of interesting layer to it and make it actually the clash a little clearer. Then we started to draw on references. Since it's a lighthearted comedy, we wanted it to be lighthearted. And so our first references were for those silly spaghetti westerns that were done in Italy where all the cowboys rode horses and spoke Italian. And when we saw the movies in the United States, of course, they were all dubbed, but you could tell that the words didn't really go with the mouths because they were all speaking Italian. And that was sort of our first reference. And then all kinds of references from our childhood where we grew up with the Cartwrights and Bonanza and Gunsmoke and those sorts of cowboy shows became references for different things in the piece. And it was just one of those fun things. And if there's anything you want to do with Pasquale, is you want to have fun with the piece. And that's how we all arrived at the Western idea, the designers and myself. The challenges of comedy are immense because the singers the performers have to have charm, timing, and all this sort of innate stuff that you can't teach anybody in like 2 weeks in a rehearsal period. And telling the story is extremely important, and basing the comedy in the characters and the story is very important so that the comedy doesn't feel like it is imposed upon the piece, but feels like it grows out of what the characters are doing. You go back to the table this way, and you pick up your friend here, you say, and you start to talk to him through the next section.
Incomincia a parlare all'animale. Ok.
These four folks were all brand new to me. And Bruno was interesting because we do have a language barrier because my Italian is not very good and his English is not very good. And yet, interestingly enough, through a minimum of translation, he threw himself into this part and was joyous about the piece and about this production. No, keep him. No, keep him. Yeah. Keep him. Yeah, she's up there.
Uscì sola quest'ora nel primo di nozze, debbo pormi costo ed impedirlo.
And if you want, you've got him kind of like this. Like he's responding to him.
Come se lui ti rispondesse. Si fa presto a dirlo, colei ha certi occhiacci, certo parla sultana. Ad ogni modo può provarmi. Se poi fallisce il tentativo.
È un personaggio vero, umano, è una persona anziana che si sente ancora la giovinezza e quindi questa ventata di gioventù che gli porta al dottore, disgraziato, perché è un birichino il dottore.
Don Pasquale is a true character, a real person. And he is old, but he feels young, and he wants to live. And he feels this kind of wind of youth, and Don Pasquale is also a little birichino, means still a smart guy.
E quindi lui si trova in questa situazione e gli casca il mondo praticamente.
And when he is in the middle of this situation, he feels that the whole world is falling around him.
Prima si sente alle stelle, poi cade per terra.
Before he is in heaven, and then he falls for what is happening to him.
Aspetta, aspetta, cara sposina, la mia vendetta già s'avvicina, già ti preme, già m'ha raggiunto, tutte in un punto l'hai da scontare. Vedrai se già una ragione camera, se le tiri tutte le lacrime, se già una ragione, se le tiri tutte le lacrime, voglio prendere le
anche perché la comicità di Donizetti è sempre molto più elaborata di quella di Rossini. Quella di Rossini è diretta, è una comicità diretta. Quella di Don Pasquale è un po' più pensata.
He finds the comic approach in Rossini operas is more straight, more direct. In Donizetti is a little more intellectual, more thought. Is saying is different than Rossini.
Exactly. And now you're just going to be a sweet, wonderful little wife again.
Amo molto questa produzione, è molto bella. Devo dire che è tra le più interessanti che ho fatto. Io ne ho fatte molte di Don Pasquale.
He loves very much these productions. He did many times this role with many great directors, but he finds this production one of the most interesting he ever did.
Set him down there. Pick the paper. Read the paper, right. Yeah, actually, it's funny if he can't, if he feels like it. He doesn't have to. It's funny if he does this and he goes, Signorina, so that he's actually behind the paper for the first couple of lines.
La prima frase mentre sei vicinissimo, vicino.
Exactly.
Signorina, in tanta fretta, dove va? Vorrebbe dirmi.
È una cosa presto detta, al teatro divertirmi.
Ing is just a bundle of energy and excitement on stage. One of the most energetic Norinas that I've ever had. Exciting, funny, wonderful voice.
Il marito felice, quanto parla non s'ascolta.
Non s'ascolta.
Il marito quanto parla non s'ascolta, First day I arrived, I've been told that, oh, this story is about Wild Wild West. Oh, I hadn't had no idea about it. I just saw a little bit television show, very limited, because I came out from China only 8 years ago, and we hadn't have so many materials about American television series.
So cowboys and things like that you didn't know about in Shanghai?
A cowboy, yes, I can see the image of a Marlboro. That's very popular. Then now I understand so naturally. The more and more, with the hat, with this leather jacket, belt, and trousers, and how to say the shoes. There's leather boots. Oh gosh, it's fun.
But you have a gun. I see you have a gun on stage
Yeah.
and everything.
Well, yes. I've been told, somebody told me, just thinking of Nancy Reagan, because in her book she was mentioned about, I don't know very well, but I just heard that when she was growing up and little girl, they used to put their little gun under the pillow. So what I think of the little gun in the first act,
No, I saw you swinging that around in the rehearsal. I thought that was you did that very well.
Really?
Yeah.
Practice?
Yeah, you're Annie Oakley.
Annie Oakley. Now I know this name now. I think Norina, which I designed her character, is different. She has part of character like Subretta, but she is elegant. I try to not to move my body too much, because Susanna, you can do like, she's down to earth, is a servant, is a maid, anyway. They are all smart, but she is maid. And Despina too, very down to earth, sometimes very wild, and not very well educated. But Norina, I think she's probably from good family background, well-mannered. And so I try not to use that body, these kind of things too much, Sophia Loren too much things. Try not to, but sometimes I still do. And keep the core inside, moving the head more, hands, but body try to be still. Still practicing these days, I think she is kind of a Parisienne. I was preparing this role thinking that way, but now in the Wild Wild West style, of course, you have to slightly change.
Voi sapete sei d'Ernesto, sono amico e ben li voglio. Voi sapete se ben li voglio.
I love working with Ying. She's great. She's always so vibrant, and she has no qualms about asking questions, and she's refreshingly sincere, which I really appreciate in this business, because a lot of times people aren't so sincere, and she's just sincere and just herself. And I like to think of myself as being that way too, because we are, as she said, we're Americans doing an Italian art form, and there's a lot to learn, I think, and a lot of growing to take place. And I think there's no better place to learn than here.
Solo tende a cor bella.
Siamo intesi, rito impegno.
Io la parte ora vincerò.
character I play, Dr. Malatesta, is a real schemer, and he's got a good heart. Even though he might come off as being a little bit of a bad guy, he's trying to really influence Don Pasquale to take the Sophronia as his wife, and in doing so, he has this big plan, and he plots this thing with Norina, and so I'd say his principal characteristic is that he's scheming, and he's quick, and he's fun too. He's vibrant, and he's got youthful quality. Him and Norina, I think the two of them, the little duo, they have a lot of spunk and spirit, and just coming up with this plan to fool this older guy. They have a lot of fun. I get to swagger around, I get cowboy boots, I get a cigar, I get a cowboy hat. So I think those things influence my physicality in the role. Vocally, I don't think it does. There's a few gags where I have the cigar in my mouth while I'm singing, so I guess those would influence it. But you know, it's still the same opera, the same Italian, same singing.
It's a new tempo. Slower. It's just a fraction, but we don't continue the same tempo. Proprio quella che ci vuole, pam 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 pam. Proprio quella che ci vuole. In due. Just a fraction.
Chris brings, as Malatesta, brings a certain sort of dry wit to the role, which is quite wonderful. You get the feeling that he is a bit of a schemer and sort of just enjoys it in a very subtle sort of way. He brings a great subtlety to the part, which is wonderful, and Matthew is just one of the funniest Ernestos you're ever going to see. Ernesto often comes off as kind of a whiny, little unattractive, unsympathetic character in many productions of Don Pasquale. In this production, thanks to some of the setting, but also thanks to Matthew's great charm, Ernesto comes off as just a kind of total sweetheart in the piece. You can understand why Norina, who's a very strong character, might be interested in this guy. When you took the picture out, your hat was here. You left your hat here.
Oh, I see.
Give me your hat for just a second.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So in other words, I was like this.
Exactly.
Nobody could tell that I took the picture.
That you took the picture out. So you have to take the picture out and sort of hold it to the side, and then put your hat back on. Exactly. And then and also then it's not close to your body. Pasquale has a fighting chance to come over and look at it, and then you can go like that. No, you can't see my picture.
Ernesto he's young, certainly under 25, for sure, and probably closer to around 21. He's quite petulant, actually, and you know, doesn't like it when he doesn't get his own way, but you know, in this particular case, it's a little more striking because not only is his uncle not letting him marry the woman who he wants, but he comes to find out that the woman who he wants is the woman who the uncle is going to marry, and in fact has proposed to and has been accepted. So that's a very heart-wrenching thing for him, you know, and he's really he's very lovable. Ernesto is, because his heartbreak is very real. One of the hardest things about Ernesto, about singing Ernesto, is the tessitura of the role. It lies quite high, and in many operas from this particular era, a lot of them weren't set with such big orchestration. Not that Donizetti's orchestration was large, but compared to, say, Rossini, it's a bigger, fuller sound with more woodwinds and brass. So in order to remain in that sort of high tessitura, this high-lying section of the voice, but still be able to produce enough sound to ride over the orchestra, it's a very difficult work. And to find a way to husband your resources from one piece to the next and make sure that each piece comes off fresh and vital, you've got to be very careful. Acting-wise, in this particular production, David makes everything very clear. And in that way, it's quite easy. But there's something that I have to do in this production that I've never done before, and hopefully I'll never do again. But the big tenor aria is sung in a whorehouse, and in fact, not just in a whorehouse, but in a bath. And so I sing the aria with little to nothing on, and it's a very difficult thing to stand up in front of an audience of 3,000 or however many there are and show yourself to the world.
Again showing his remarkable genius, Eduardo Müller moving from the great tragedy and drama of Tosca to this frothy, lightweight, but musically detailed production of Don Pasquale. This is not lightweight music. It is still music that must be conducted well, measured well, it has to be interpreted well. After all, this is the composer who wrote Lucia di Lammermoor and many other great works. This is not just a throwaway opera.
One. It's so refreshing to do a comic opera after so many murders in Tosca. Music is not just a tragedy. Music is a game. Music is joy. And Don Pasquale was joyful in writing this opera. I really consider it a masterpiece for several reasons. Probably the most important is he has been able to characterize, to give a different kind of music to any personage in the opera. The music he writes for Norina is different from the music he writes for the tenor, for Don Pasquale. And he sees all these human beings from a very different point of view, a very touching. He really describes, he paints these parts much more than it was usually done in that time. Even Verdi, even the early Verdi, is not so precise, so well definite in characterizing the parts. It's beautiful. It is not easy for the singers, not easy for conductor, for the orchestra, of course, because it's very clean. It has to be played very clean way.
Tutto per tuo bene, tutto per tuo bene. Se vuoi Lorina perdere, non hai che a seguitare. Se così
Everybody, even the singers, has to be much less. Has to be almost a secret. Almost secret. Ah, figliolo mi va bene. At least in the spirit of the pianissimo. And you too. Adesso veramente. Rhythm in this opera is at the same importance, perhaps even more than the melody. So if I give 100% of freedom, there is the danger that it is just going through the piece. No, especially because David Gately created a very specific situations. He is very precise in every movement he asks to his singers. And for this reason, I see the piece almost as a ballet. In the sense, I want rhythm everywhere, even when nobody sings and nobody plays. There is a rhythm, a theatrical rhythm in this opera.
Don Pasquale is one of the most lighthearted and infectious pieces that you can come in contact with. In this particular version, it has a lot of references that we are familiar with, so you can probably, as a brand new opera goer, relate to it in a way you might not normally if it was set in Rome in 1850. The characters are likable and lovable, and the music is just totally wonderful and infectious and winning. I mean, you can't not set your toe a tapping when you're listening to this music. It's just delightful.
Ma è un grande maestro, bravo come direttore d'orchestra e umanamente splendido.
Thank you. I'm not paying him.